They say a woman is the heart of the home, soft, nurturing, intuitive. But what happens when the heart grows cold? When the same hands that built peace now sow chaos? The power of a woman is not just in creation, but in destruction. In this video, we unravel a profound psychological truth that a woman has the power to both make a home and break it, not because she is flawed, but because she is human, complex, emotional, and powerful beyond measure. Throughout history, across cultures and civilizations, the woman has been seen not just as a nurturer, but as a force of nature. In ancient mythology, she was not always the gentle mother or the romantic muse. She was also the storm, the chaos, the deathbringer. And herein lies a deep psychological truth. The feminine is dualistic. She is the creator and the destroyer. Carl Jung called this the archetype, a universal pattern buried in the collective unconscious of humanity. The woman as mother is the source of life, care, nourishment, and love. But the same archetype has a shadow. The mother can become the devouring mother, one who suffocates, manipulates, controls. She can nurture growth, or she can crush it. She can protect, or she can imprison. In Hindu mythology, this duality is personified in the goddess Kali, both a mother and a warrior. Her love is boundless, but so is her rage. In Greek mythology, we meet Hera, the jealous wife of Zeus, fiercely loyal but wrathful in betrayal. And in Egyptian lore, there's Isis, the ultimate mother figure, healer and restorer of life. These ancient stories weren't just mythology, they were psychological blueprints. They showed us what lies dormant in every woman, the power to breathe life into a space, and the power to tear it down when trust is broken, or when she herself is broken. Behind every peaceful home is not just love, but emotional intelligence. And behind every storm inside that home, more often than not, is a power imbalance hidden beneath unspoken desires, unmet needs, and unhealed wounds. In romantic relationships, women are often the emotional compass. Whether she's conscious of it or not, her energy sets the tone for connection. Her moods ripple through the house like waves. Her presence can make the home feel alive or suffocating. Let's begin with a psychological truth. Masculine energy seeks peace. Feminine energy seeks depth. But when a woman's need for depth becomes control, or when her emotional expression turns into dominance, the balance is lost. Love turns into a battlefield, and the home becomes a war zone where silence is louder than screaming. Why does this happen? It begins with how many women have been conditioned to relate to power. For centuries, female power was suppressed, feared, or distorted. So today, many women unconsciously express power in unhealthy ways, not through assertiveness, but through emotional manipulation, passive aggression, or psychological withdrawal. She may not shout, but she might sulk for days. She may not insult, but she'll forget to be kind. She may not leave, but she'll weaponize her absence. A woman builds a home not merely with bricks or walls, but with warmth, rhythm, care, and emotion. The way she cooks, speaks, laughs, disciplines, and forgives, all of it forms the psychological environment of that space. She weaves invisible threads of emotional stability through the family. Her calm can settle storms, her storm can shatter peace. But why does this duality exist? Because a woman, like any human being, is not a one-dimensional creature. She contains multitudes. She is capable of love so deep it can heal generations, and of anger so fierce it can fracture every bond. And often these emotional extremes are not opposite, but interconnected. The deeper the love, the deeper the capacity for pain. And when that pain festers unhealed, it lashes out. This is not weakness. This is unprocessed power. Jung's idea of the anima, the inner feminine spirit within every man, shows us something more. He believed that men are drawn to women not just physically, but spiritually. They seek the woman who completes their soul, their inner opposite. And so, when a woman is emotionally healthy, she becomes that mirror of the soul. But when she is toxic, repressed, or damaged, that mirror becomes a weapon. She reflects a man's insecurities, amplifies his fears, and challenges his identity. The same woman who could heal his inner child can just as easily resurrect his deepest wounds. So the question is not whether a woman can make or break a home. The real question is, what determines which path she takes? The answer lies in one word: consciousness. When a woman is conscious of her emotions, her traumas, her cycles, her power, she becomes a light in the home. She knows when to speak and when to be silent. She knows when to hold space and when to set boundaries. She builds not with force, but with presence. But when she is unconscious, driven by wounded instincts, fear or resentment, she becomes chaos in disguise. Her words cut, her silence becomes punishment, her love turns conditional. And that same home which once felt safe now feels like a battlefield. This is not to blame women, it is to understand them. Every woman holds a seed of divine creative power, but if she has not been taught how to use it, or worse, if her own spirit was crushed in childhood or past relationships, she may unconsciously pass on that damage. In today's world, where women are told to be everything, soft yet strong, nurturing yet independent, selfless yet empowered, many are silently drowning in identity confusion, and when a woman loses her center, the home loses its center too. So in this first chapter, we lay the foundation. The woman is the emotional architect of the home, not because she is supposed to be, but because she has the ability to be. Whether she builds or breaks depends on how well she knows and heals herself. Because the most dangerous storm is the one that thinks it's calm. She may not demand, but she'll expect you to know without ever saying what she wants. This silent war creates chaos, and yet it's so subtle that many men cannot even describe what's wrong. They just feel it, like walking through fog that chokes the soul. Over time, this emotional atmosphere erodes intimacy, connection, and trust. This is not about blame. This is about conscious power. You see, a woman who is not conscious of her own power often overuses it, not because she's cruel, but because she is afraid of being abandoned, afraid of being unseen, afraid of vulnerability. And in this fear, she tries to control the external instead of confronting the internal. She begins to micromanage the relationship. She criticizes instead of communicating. She corrects instead of connecting. She tests instead of trusting. And what happens? The man retreats, not just physically, but emotionally. He stops opening up, he avoids conflict, he becomes a shell of himself, and then she feels even more unseen, and the cycle repeats. This is how homes are broken, not through infidelity or divorce, but through this quiet decay of emotional connection. But when a woman becomes aware of this, when she awakens to her role in the relational dance, she can choose a different path. She can become a source of harmony instead of tension. Because here's the paradox. The feminine does not lose power by softening. It gains power through surrendering control, not surrendering her dignity, not becoming passive, but surrendering the ego's need to dominate, correct, and control. A wise woman knows that her true strength lies in her ability to invite, not force, to express without blaming, to trust without testing, to create safety through emotional presence, not emotional pressure. And when she does this, something beautiful happens. The man rises. He feels safe to open up. He becomes more expressive. He feels less defensive. He wants to protect the space that she so beautifully cultivates, not out of fear, but from genuine reverence. This is the divine dance of masculine and feminine energy. She brings emotional depth. He brings structure and protection. Together, they build not just a house, but a home that feels like a sacred space. So yes, a woman can break a home with her emotional volatility, unconscious control, and lack of self-awareness, but she can also build a home with her softness, her grounded presence, and her conscious use of power. It is her choice, and it begins with one simple but powerful act. Looking in the mirror and asking, am I bringing peace or pressure? Am I creating safety or silence? Am I leading with love or fear disguised as control? Because ultimately the quality of the home reflects the quality of the woman's inner world. A home is not just a physical space, it is an emotional climate. And at the center of that climate often stands a woman, whether she is a mother, a wife, a sister, or a daughter. Her emotional state radiates through the walls, through the tone of conversations, through the atmosphere itself. And one of the deepest ways this plays out is through attachment, the invisible thread that ties humans together in safety or strangles them in fear. To understand how a woman can make or break a home, we must first understand attachment theory. Attachment theory, first developed by John Bowlby and later expanded by Mary Ainsworth, shows us that our earliest relationships, usually with our mothers, form the blueprint for all future emotional connections. If a child receives consistent love, attention, and security, they develop a secure attachment. But if love is unpredictable, neglectful, or suffocating, the child develops insecure attachment, either anxious, avoidant, or disorganized. Now here's the key. In most families, it is the woman who plays the primary emotional role. She's often the first caregiver, the one whose facial expressions, voice and touch communicate to the infant whether the world is safe or dangerous. A mother who holds her child with warmth, responds to its cries, and offers comfort teaches that child, "You matter, you're safe, the world is kind." But a mother who is cold, distracted, emotionally volatile, or inconsistently affectionate teaches something else. Love is uncertain. I must perform, please or hide to be accepted. That's how emotional templates are born. Not in grand events, but in subtle, repeated moments. There's a quiet truth that echoes through every ancient culture, every spiritual tradition, and every psychological framework. Behind every strong man is not just a supportive woman, but a woman who sees him not as a provider, not as a protector, not as a trophy, but as a soul, with fears, hopes, wounds, and potential. You see, the sacred masculine is not built through wealth, titles, or muscles. It is forged in the fire of purpose, integrity, and presence. And while a man must walk that path himself, a woman can be the mirror that reflects his truth, or the fog that makes him doubt it. Carl Jung believed that every man carries within him an anima, the inner feminine, and how he relates to the women in his life, or especially his lover, profoundly affects how integrated or fragmented that anima becomes. So what does this mean in real life? It means a woman holds a spiritual responsibility when she chooses to stand beside a man. She can become a sanctuary where his masculine energy can rise, sharpen, and grow, or she can become a battlefield that leaves him constantly defending, doubting, and shrinking. As that child grows, these early attachment patterns become deeply embedded. They shape how the child, now an adult, will handle relationships, conflict, intimacy, and trust. And unless healed, they replicate themselves like shadows. A woman who once felt unloved may become overprotective or emotionally unavailable or controlling, not out of malice, but out of an unconscious attempt to gain the safety she never had. When a woman hasn't processed her own attachment wounds, she may unknowingly project them onto her partner or children. She may create an environment of emotional instability, where one moment she's loving and present, the next she's cold or reactive. This inconsistency creates tension. Everyone walks on eggshells, unsure of which version of her they'll encounter. And here's where homes begin to break, not through physical violence, but through emotional confusion. The child doesn't feel safe. The partner feels emotionally distant. Love begins to feel like a minefield, but the opposite is also true. When a woman is emotionally regulated, when she's done the work of healing her own past, she becomes a wellspring of emotional security. She can sit with her child's fear without panicking. She can disagree with her partner without turning cold. She listens before reacting. She creates a psychological space where emotions are safe to be expressed rather than feared. This is how homes are made, not with pretty decor, but with emotional safety. A place where tears are welcome, where anger can be spoken instead of suppressed, where love doesn't require performance. In psychology, we call this emotional attunement, the ability to feel with another, to sense their inner world. It is a superpower, and most women possess it more naturally due to their neurological makeup. But if that power is misused or blocked by past trauma, it turns inward and becomes anxiety, depression, or emotional volatility. You see, a woman's emotional state often sets the tone for the home. Her laughter lightens the air, her pain darkens it. Her joy is contagious, and so is her resentment. This is not a burden, it is a gift when used with awareness. That's why healing is not optional, it's necessary, because unhealed women don't just hurt themselves. They unconsciously wound everyone around them. But healed women, they become the guardians of peace, the nurturers of security, the teachers of love. So if you want to understand why some homes feel like heaven and others like hell, look beyond the walls. Look at the emotions circulating within. Often, at the center of that emotional system is a woman either carrying peace or carrying pain. And that pain, if unacknowledged, becomes the invisible architect of a broken home. Let's be clear, this is not about feeding ego or tolerating emotional immaturity. It's about recognizing the emotional alchemy that takes place in every romantic dynamic. When a woman constantly belittles a man's ambition, mocks his dreams, or compares him to others, she doesn't motivate him. She emasculates him. When she withholds affection to punish him or uses love as leverage, she doesn't gain power. She destroys intimacy. when she corrects him in front of others, challenges his masculinity at every turn, or competes rather than cooperates, she turns what could be a temple into a battlefield. And here's the psychological core. A man cannot stay long in a space where he feels like a boy. If he feels disrespected, mothered, or emasculated, he may remain physically, but emotionally he will begin to detach. He will withdraw, shut down, or find validation elsewhere. Not because he's weak, but because every masculine soul craves respect as much as love. On the other hand, when a woman respects her man's process, even when he's struggling, she becomes his North Star. When she encourages his purpose instead of mocking his pace, when she speaks life into his wounds instead of using them against him, and when she sees his potential and believes in it, even when the world does not, she activates something sacred within him. He stands taller, he listens more, he leads with honor, not ego. He protects not just her body, but her essence. Why? Because she didn't try to fix him. She believed in his ability to rise. And that belief became the fuel for his transformation. This is not fantasy. This is psychology. Men become their truest, noblest, and strongest selves in the presence of a woman who sees their soul before their flaws. Not blindly, not foolishly, but consciously, knowing that her respect can build the emotional scaffolding upon which he constructs his greatness. But let's not romanticize this too much. A woman can also destroy a man, and it doesn't always come with screams or slaps. Sometimes it's the cold indifference, the subtle ridicule, the death by a thousand cuts criticism, the emotional absence when he's most vulnerable. And over time, the man who once stood tall begins to shrink, not because he lost his strength, but because she no longer reflected it. So here is the profound truth. A woman doesn't give a man his power, but she can awaken it. And she doesn't take his power, but she can make him forget it. This is why the feminine is not weak. It is transformational. It is the soil in which the masculine either flourishes or withers. The woman becomes the mirror of the man's soul. And through that mirror, he either sees a king or a ghost of who he used to be. What is it that truly makes a house a home? It is not the furniture, the design, or the walls. It is the energy that flows through it. The warmth of a mother's voice, the scent of a home-cooked meal, the calm presence in times of chaos. And often that energy originates from one source, the feminine essence. It is the woman's emotional intelligence, her ability to sense, to feel, to nurture, that becomes the invisible architect of harmony. Let us go deeper into this energy. Feminine energy at its core is not about gender roles or outdated expectations. It is a psychological and spiritual principle. The power to connect, soothe, heal, and flow. When a woman embodies her feminine energy consciously, she doesn't control her environment by force. She influences it through emotional resonance. She knows when a child's tantrum isn't just misbehavior, but a cry for attention. She senses when her partner is emotionally withdrawn, even before words are spoken. She can enter a tense room and soften it with a smile, a touch, or a word. This is emotional intelligence in action, not logic, but presence. Daniel Goleman, the psychologist who popularized the term emotional intelligence, described it as the ability to recognize, understand, and manage emotions, both your own and others. And women, on average, possess higher levels of emotional empathy, intuition, and relational awareness. This is not a stereotype, it's a neurological and psychological reality. We are living in a time where the feminine has been distorted, where strength is marketed as stoicism, where emotional detachment is praised as power, where dependence on a man, even for healthy love, is ridiculed as weakness. This modern confusion has created a generation of women who are strong, yes, but not soft, independent, but not intimate, ambitious, but emotionally unavailable. And in this distortion, many women are unknowingly rejecting their deepest superpower, the sacred feminine, the ability to nurture, to connect, to love deeply, to create a safe emotional space. Let's begin with a phenomenon that's quietly growing, hyper-independence. On the surface, it looks admirable. She doesn't need anyone. She makes her own money. She handles everything by herself. But peel back the layers, and what you often find is not confidence, but trauma, not strength, but fear of vulnerability, not power, but a deep belief that being soft leads to being hurt. Psychologically, hyperindependence is often a trauma response, the result of being let down, betrayed, or controlled. And instead of healing, the woman builds walls. She calls them boundaries, but they are really barriers. She calls it freedom, but it's actually fear. She says she doesn't need anyone, but her heart is starving for closeness. Now add to this another modern sickness, narcissistic feminism, not the original empowering feminism that called for equality, but the distorted. But here is the danger. What happens when a woman is disconnected from her own emotions? When she is overwhelmed, burned out, or numb, that natural gift turns inward. Instead of radiating calm, she radiates anxiety. Instead of sensing others, she overreacts or withdraws. The nurturing energy becomes scattered, replaced by bitterness or fatigue, and the home, once built on her emotional flow, begins to crack. This is why self-care for women is not a luxury, it's a necessity. A woman who does not refill her emotional cup cannot pour love into her home. Her nervous system becomes overstimulated, and in that state, even small problems feel like personal attacks. She becomes reactive instead of responsive. But when she is grounded in herself, when she has time to rest, reflect, and heal, she becomes a force of emotional stability. She doesn't need to yell to command attention. Her energy alone brings order. Her compassion becomes structure. Her softness becomes strength. This nurturing energy is what makes a home feel alive. Think of the homes you visited that felt peaceful the moment you walked in. The lighting was soft. The kitchen smelled of something warm. The people weren't just polite, they were emotionally open. That energy didn't come from a designer. It came from a woman who infused her care into the very fabric of the space. And yet in today's world, women are pulled in every direction, expected to be career-driven, emotionally available, physically perfect, endlessly patient, and constantly productive. The result? Emotional burnout. When a woman's inner world is neglected, her outer world begins to crumble. Not because she is weak, but because she is carrying too much. Just as a woman can build a home with her love, her emotional warmth, and her intuitive wisdom, she can also unravel that home quietly, subtly, and often unconsciously through emotional instability, unhealed trauma, and manipulation. You see, the feminine force is powerful, but like all forms of power, it has two faces, one that nurtures and one that wounds. We live in a world where much is spoken about toxic masculinity, and rightfully so. But far less is said about toxic femininity, not in the sense of aggression or domination, but in emotional sabotage, guilt-tripping, passive control, and psychological manipulation. Let's take it from the root: trauma. When a woman has suffered emotional neglect, abandonment, betrayal, or abuse, and never truly faced it, those wounds fester. They distort how she sees the world. The nervous system becomes hypervigilant. The heart becomes guarded. And love, which should be a source of healing, becomes a battlefield. A woman carrying unhealed trauma may unknowingly project her fears onto her partner. She may see disrespect where there is none. She may demand constant reassurance, then push it away. She may test love, punish intimacy, or weaponize silence. Not because she's cruel, but because her subconscious is screaming, "Don't hurt me again!" But in doing so, she slowly begins to suffocate the emotional atmosphere of the home. This is what Carl Jung meant when he spoke of the shadow, the unconscious part of ourselves we refuse to face. For women, this shadow often takes the form of emotional manipulation. And here's what it can look like: using tears to deflect responsibility, playing the victim to avoid accountability, guilt-tripping children or partners for having boundaries, creating emotional confusion, praising one moment, criticizing the next, withholding affection as punishment, constantly testing loyalty through drama and chaos. This is not love, this is control dressed in emotional language. The greatest architecture of the soul is built in childhood. And the woman, the mother, is often the first architect. From the moment a child is born, their nervous system synchronizes with the mother's emotional state. Before the child learns language, they absorb tone. Before they understand logic, they feel energy. This is why the emotional world of a mother becomes the first universe her children live in. Carl Jung once said, "The greatest burden a child must bear is the unlived life of the parent." Every unhealed wound, every repressed dream, every unspoken resentment, it doesn't just disappear, it gets passed down. This is the power of emotional legacy. A mother who carries bitterness often raises a daughter who doubts love. A mother who feels invisible often raises a son who cannot recognize women's emotions. A mother who is emotionally chaotic unintentionally teaches children that love is anxiety, not peace. And here's the light. A woman who chooses healing can stop this cycle. When she holds space for her child's emotions instead of shaming them, she teaches emotional safety. When she allows herself to rest and not self-sacrifice endlessly, she teaches self-worth. When she expresses her needs clearly and respectfully, she teaches boundaries. When she forgives herself, she teaches the child that being human is okay. And this is perhaps the most sacred power a woman holds. Not just the ability to give life, but to give new life to the emotional DNA of her family, to transmute wounds into wisdom, to transform dysfunction into dignity, to take the shattered pieces of her childhood and turn them into stepping stones for her children's future. The emotional patterns of one woman, when transformed, can shift the destiny of an entire bloodline. About the deep, invisible power a woman holds in the simple act of being emotionally awake. And that, more than any tradition, is the foundation of the home.